All right, welcome everybody to a special edition of the Very Pagan Magick Cast. You are joined today by myself, Felix, and Tyson on the camera there.
Oh wow.
Um, and this is a bit of a special show. This isn't part of the regular podcast. We're not going to be joined by Malcolm. This isn't going to be about Pioneer or card thoughts or really anything that we do on the regular show. This is going to be a video that sort of discusses our history and our stance on some, I'll call it current controversy in the Magic world. And a, the goal is to sort of remove a lot of misinformation and a lot of confusion that the general Magic community has by using some of the insight that Tyson and I have sort of built over the last decade. We're going to be discussing Secret Lair Ultimate Edition, and we're also going to be talking a little bit about our history within the LGS ecosystem. Um, Speaking for myself, I've been a part of basically every level. I've been a player. I've been in charge of ordering. I've been in charge of running events multiple times for multiple stores, and I've been a part of a store or a community that has built their Magic from 6 players at a weekly to 40 plus players at a weekly, and I've done that at 2 different stores. And then I'll let Tyson sort of describe his history, and then we'll get into some more of the specifics. But yeah, welcome to the video, and I hope you enjoy.
Yes. Yeah, so just to build on Felix's comments there, my trajectory follows what would be, I guess, maybe similar to a lot of people within the community, no, though not exactly the same. Not necessarily a lot of people within the community end up operating in LGS on that side of things, but I started off mostly as a collector. Still to this day, I'm mostly a collector. But that collecting turned into acquiring collections from people, turned into buying and selling, doing a lot of trading and things like that. That's how I dipped my toes into it initially. Just really liking a lot of the transactional nature of Magic. So trading cards that I had for things that I wanted, and vice versa with people. But then ultimately, yeah, I had an opportunity to get hooked up with a game store. Uh, both of us got hooked up. Well, you were there first, and then I came along later. But yeah, we had that opportunity. For better or worse, it was what it was. That's maybe a whole other show we could go into about how that ultimately ended up. But
A
yeah, we
different
both,
discussion for sure.
yeah, we both left that store. Ended up working there for approximately 2 and a bit years, I think.
A little a
Um,
little under 2 years for me. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and then ended up leaving. But yeah, it was kind of the same thing that you had mentioned there, Felix, as well too, like working on the supply side, ordering product, running tournaments, um, building orders for people, interacting and building a community. Basically, like this was a store. There was another store in the area that was established, and you had worked at that one,
Yep.
Felix. We had known each other prior to that, known of each other, I should say, but got a lot more friendly and worked a lot more closely once going to the second store. But yeah, it was just a store that started as a board game cafe, branched into Magic because the owner and a lot of the other people that worked there were interested in Magic and played a lot of Magic, and it just kind of made that natural transition to becoming a retail outlet for it, in
Mm-hmm.
addition to the board games and all that. So yeah, so there was no like kind of formal training or anything like that. I think both of us probably used a lot of the experience that we had. You more than me, you had already worked at a store
Yep.
prior to that, but just experience with buying and selling, working within the community. I had done, food industry service jobs in the past as well too. So just how to interact with customers and troubleshoot, and then from there, like turning the retail into just kind of that holistic LGS that you want. So a lot of play space for people to play in tournaments, to run events. We eventually started running some miniatures tournaments for Warhammer and things like that. But Magic was definitely the primary focus, and there was a lot of opportunity there to gain a lot of experience, but also put to work a lot of the experience that we had gathered at that point. And I think it's important, probably before we get too far into this, just to speak about the LGS that we worked at. As we mentioned, this was a board game cafe, so it had access to food sales, alcohol, in a separate kind of cafe restaurant that was directly attached to the quote unquote LGS part of it. So there were other revenue streams coming into the store. So it wasn't that situation that you always hear about LGS is struggling because they only have one source of revenue, like Magic only. So we benefited a lot from that. But with that said, we operated on a model we weren't trying to maximize our margins per se. I was never the kind of person to maximize a margin, even if I had bought a collection from people. There's no sense me, socking capital away or cash, waiting for a card or some product to hit its highest point in price and then try and sell to maximize that return.
And I think that's something that we sort of agreed on
Yes.
immediately.
Yep.
And that was a very stark contrast to the store that I had worked at previously.
Yes. Yeah. It was known. Yeah. The other store there, I guess, was known in the community more so as like a kind of I don't know, maybe more of a face-to-face model kind of thing. We're up in Canada here, so face-to-face is typically our biggest vendor up here. But yeah, so we operated much more. We wanted to be a much more liquid. We wanted to have a high velocity of sales, so we wanted lots of sales every day. And when we got a card in, if I picked up a card from somebody's binder and they traded it into the store for store credit or cash or other product or something like that, I wanted to get rid of that card immediately. I don't want it sitting around for X number of months. I want to take that and then invest in the next thing and then invest in the next thing and grow that way. And we started off fairly small. I mean, eventually it started with, it was a combination of like a collection I had on hand of leftover cards. The store owner had some cards and then put some capital into buying sealed product, booster packs, all that kind of stuff to fill out it initially. So, I mean, one of the things that you never do is invest your personal money into something like this. But, say what you will about operating a business and using your own resources for the store. But yeah, it was always just like taking that investment and turning it into something else. And at the end of it, we had a pretty sizable collection. Certainly had a good reputation within the community. We were well known. We had people coming out always for our modern nights every week were popular. We were averaging 35, 40 people on average.
I think our peak was 45 and our average was around 38.
Yep.
We were right around 40 people for like regular weekly event.
Yeah, and this I guess I would have left last year around springtime, I guess. Leading into the summer.
I left at the end of April of last year.
Okay, so I was probably just a month or two after you then.
And I do just want to draw a little bit of context to this. Tyson had been there for a little longer than I had, but my first experience playing at this store was through a summer modern league. And I had never played, I'd never really played there before. And the reason I decided to go was because I had a friend who could only play on one night. He could only come out for one night. His name Matthew. And he wanted to play Magic, and I wanted to play Magic, so we found the store and we went for their summer league. And that was the only night of Magic we would play. There was pretty much solely the two of us, plus the person who ran Magic there at the time. His name is Steve. Plus maybe one or two other people. And those one or two other people, a lot of the time, were an employee named Matt, and then maybe like another random straggler. So I'd say maybe six people per week. And this is before we had really taken off.
Yeah, very DIY.
Yeah.
Players trying to run maybe a legitimate outfit, kind of, trying to take it to the next level, maybe. So
yeah, it was essentially a bunch of people who had never been a part of a local game store like ecosystem outside of being players, and they were taking a swing at organizing events and building a community and all that kind of stuff, and that's fantastic. That's like, passionate players are a great way to build your community. If you have someone in your store who is, a known face and is respected or liked within your local community, it's very likely that they can bring players. And that was exactly what happened at that summer league, is that, the week after I texted two friends and they came. And the following week, two more came that I knew. And then the summer league ended, and I moved back to Toronto, and Magic sort of dwindled for a little while, I'll say. And it didn't really start up again until the following summer. I returned from Toronto, and that employee, Matt, who played in those tournaments, texted me asking if I wanted to come aboard, basically asking if I wanted a job to serve, and I would do Magic stuff as well. And that evolved into me kind of taking over the event side of Magic with Tyson for running the product side. And for a long time that worked really well. With like I don't know. I don't want to sound like too cocky about this, but with a lot of the players in our community, I was the reason they came to play at that store.
No, I don't think that's no, I think that's perfectly reasonable take on it.
Yeah.
As I say, you mentioned it perfectly. Like you were a known quantity already in the community from having run the previous store or helping out on that aspect of it. But also as well too, just within the community, like you're known as a knowledgeable guy. You know a lot about Magic. You follow a lot of Magic. You're good at deck building, you play in various formats, all that kind of stuff. Like you stay very current on that, so it's easy for people that are new to that kind of community or want to get involved in that kind of community having access to a resource like that. Whereas me, yeah, I was more on I was known within the community for buying and selling collections and cards, and I could be a resource to get people things for cheap because I was more or less kind of backpack vending for a little while, not trying to do anything too legitimate, but that was just a little kind of side hustle I had on the go while I was working other jobs or still at school.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was easy to make that transition because the quantity of cards and product dealing with, they needed someone to manage it at that point, so it was easy. I saw the opportunity and it was something I wanted to try out, so it was a very good team. I mean,
Yeah,
ultimately.
I think our combination was basically the best thing you can ask for, right? It's a person who's very good on the product side but doesn't have great recognition within a player community, and then someone who has great recognition within the player community for running good events and for being like a good advocate from store to player. And then that combination of having the well known or well liked person being the face of an event, and then having the incredibly knowledgeable and professional and like good person on the retail side as well. And that means that players come in for the events and then they stay because they like dealing with the person and the cards.
Yep.
And that's like a really powerful combination.
Yep.
So over that next maybe 6 months to a year, our structure kind of stayed the same, where Tyson headed up ordering and all of that, and I was still doing events and focusing on the other side of the business in the service portion. And then I came on board into the retail side when I was promoted. And I had a lot more of a hands-on sort of collaboration with Tyson when it came to what we wanted the future of Magic to look like at the store.
Yeah,
We had a lot more control than we did at the beginning, and we worked together to build off of that.
Well, and that was, I mean, again, not to, toot our own horns here too much here, but the results did speak for themselves, like it was a very untested kind of way of doing things. I mean, neither of us had, explicitly kind of a business background. We had, transferable skills from other areas we had worked in, or just kind of personal experience and things like that. But I mean, we did a good job. We ran that place very well,
Mm-hmm.
really efficiently, and we built up a fairly sizable community. We had people coming in, weekly and that kind of stuff to buy from us, to play in the shop, all that kind of stuff, because they had known, like they knew us. We were Magic first, not necessarily like business first, and that's maybe not the best way to contextualize it to make a case for what we're going to discuss later, but
I won't say that we weren't business first.
We were as businessy as we needed to be to serve the customers, I guess,
Yeah.
as best as possible, right? Like if it was a matter of somebody coming in and saying, oh, this card, I'd really love it for my deck, and it's listed at $11, and they say, oh, like I'd only give you 10, but they're buying a bunch of other product or something like that. Yeah, like you cut deals, you give discounts, all that kind of stuff, because you want to ultimately, at the end of the day, everyone to be happy, and also the store got what it needed. It eventually got the revenue and all that kind of stuff. So there was no reason to risk alienating other people just to make an extra 10% on a sale or something. Like what would be the point? So yeah.
That was something that we were very good, that I won't say we were very good at, but that we did very well. I could we're gonna jump into little tangents here and there throughout this video that are a whole nother discussion. But I want to use one example here of a player that I met at one store. His name was Isaac, and you know Isaac, Tyson.
Yes, I do.
He came in saying that he had played Magic with his camp counselor that summer, and he really liked it and he wanted to get into it. So I built him a deck out of commons and uncommons that we had at the store, and I covered the cost. And since then, he has played near weekly at both stores that I've been a part of. He has bought countless cards. He plays Commander. He's moved into Modern. He plays, he's been to Grand Prix now. And Magic, I can safely say, has been a very significant part of his life through his teenage years. I think he was maybe 13 or 14 when I first met him, and I think he graduated high school this past year, something like that. And that was something that we were known for, was being able to help people get into Magic. I have two close friends now. We've talked about one of them on the podcast, Lucas. He came in asking, his friend Richard started playing Magic. He was formerly a Yu-Gi-Oh player, and he came in asking about getting into Modern. And he wanted something budget, and he didn't really know Magic cards. He wanted us to build it for him, and he wanted a deck that he could play without knowing a lot. So Tyson and I, collaborated. We built a few different lists. We ended up going with Spirits. And since then, he played foil Tron and came top 32 at a Grand Prix. Like, similar to Isaac, similar to a lot of other players, he had a good first experience at an LGS, and he had a good time when it came to the buying and selling of his cards, that he would cycle through decks with us every couple of weeks. He would go through humans and then Jund and then whatever he wanted to play the next week. And we were always there to, we're not gonna snake this guy who's a big part of our community. We like him, right? He's buying cards. He's there every week. It's good. That's the ideal. So
Presence. He's a friendly guy.
He's a friendly guy. He's great. Yeah. I'm going to his wedding this summer. Like, it's this whole thing. But if we were to, give him 50% store credit when he trades in to try and get a new deck, he wouldn't play with us for very long. If we were to upcharge him on all of his product, he wouldn't play with us for long.
Yep.
If we were to create a toxic environment for a new player in the form of, competitive attitude among players, or attitude from store to player, or through product pricing, or 1,000 of other variables, these players wouldn't stay with us. And I can go on and on and on about this, but we have a lot of players who stayed. They were new, they were welcomed in, and they very quickly moved up in the competitive nature of the game. And they very quickly became competitors at these weekly events, playing top decks, gaining knowledge every week, becoming better Magic players. And that was all because of the sort of store culture and store philosophy that Tyson and I sort of cultivated there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess maybe just for a bit more context about just the store itself and how it was run. So the store was, again, it started from a few collections or capital investments from the owner of the store put towards sealed product, largely to sell booster packs, to have them eventually cracked, sold back to the store, etc., and then start building a collection from that. But with that said, the store did have access to online. Early when I came aboard, the biggest project at the time was transitioning from just in-store sales to online. So we went with, we had an account with Crystal Commerce. Crystal Commerce hosts a lot of larger sites as well too. The biggest thing about Crystal Commerce is basically it's just a vending. It's a point of sales and a database platform. So it's a really robust system in terms of collectibles and card games and all that kind of stuff. They're quick to update and that kind of stuff as well too, and they can also build out a website for you if you want to retail online. So we eventually transitioned to online. That was certainly a big part of the business, but I definitely wouldn't say it was the biggest part of it, because again, like you were saying, Felix, we did have a really good mix of competitive and more casual players. So every week we'd have modern event or standard event sometimes as well too, like things like that. I mean, modern was definitely the premier format at the time, so we had most people coming out for that. But with that said as well too, our nights out in the cafe once a week, so we would have modern going on in the retail store part of it, but then on the other side of these double doors we had in the cafe, there would be 20-25 people maybe on some nights as well too, just playing casual Commander up front, everybody getting food, drinks, hanging out. Like it was that nice mix that you want to see. The store wasn't too spiky, it didn't just appeal mostly to competitive players. We had a lot of people just coming in because they had a pet deck they want to finish, or just random stuff like that. And that's definitely more of the customer base that I am familiar with and would prefer to interact with, because these are people largely just they have a pet deck on the go, they have some kind of cool idea in their mind that they want to see realized and that kind of stuff. And that was where we were able to kind of not forcibly but insert ourselves in the process and help them realize that thing they wanted to do. So it's just like, oh, you need a bunch of rares for your wonky EDH deck that you're putting together. Great. Let's go through the box of 4 bulk commons or bulk rares that we have, and maybe there's some cool ideas here as well too. And we'll sit down with you and talk for 30 minutes about oh, here's some other ideas. Have you thought about maybe this 20-cent rare of throwing this in there? It has a cool effect that maybe you want to do. So it was definitely nice being that resource for a lot of the players. But again, so we did have access to online, which was a big part of it, and getting everything into the online system and making it available sale certainly gave us a leg up in the area. There were some other people around us that had an online model as well too, but just not as I guess robust as ours, and we were certainly more of retailers in that sense versus people that have taken a personal hobby and tried to turn it a little more into a revenue stream, but not seriously. It's not their sole source of income or anything like that. No, this was an actual business that that sold a lot of Magic.
So I think that sort of covers the very basics of our history. There's so much more detail that we're not going to go into in this video. I think we may do another one in the future that sort of gives you the nitty gritty a bit more, but we're going to move on to the topic at hand, and that is Secret Lair Ultimate Edition, and the sort of, I'm going to call it misinformation around it, and I'm going to call it sort of the echo chamber mentality that a lot of players have, and a lot of misunderstanding from the perspective of someone who may not understand exactly how a local game store operates. So Tyson, you want to go over sort of the basics of the product, and then we'll jump into some specific examples?
Yeah, so I mean, like Felix says, the emphasis or the focus of this is mostly on Secret Lair Ultimate and kind of what's been happening in the community lately. We're recording this on Saturday, the 18th of April, so this is a day after Tolarian Community College just released a video discussing whether it's worth it to buy Secret Lair Ultimate. But again, this was a product that was originally announced on Tolarian Community College's channel for a product that contained 5 of the original Zendikar fetch lands, 1 of each, with an alternate art on them. They were non-foil, and it's a Secret Lair product that Wizards I guess decided to cut local game stores in on. This might have been, we no way to confirm it, but this might have been their attempt to appease the people that said, why are you selling cards directly to players? What happened to LGSs? You don't support them anymore, rah rah rah. So so maybe this was their attempt to be like, okay, you want the opportunity to sell a Secret Lair product, here you go. It's fetch lands that I mean, obviously players want. They're expensive for a reason, et cetera, et cetera. But this one in particular, there was the caveat that, so similar to other Secret Lair products, Wizards announced in the original, so in the original announcement for it, they said there was going to be a maximum of 10 copies given to each LGS for this to sell. You know, say what you will about like bad actors or shadowy cabal of Magic in the community. Maybe larger stores like Channel Fireball, SCG get more access to a product like this. I don't know. Who knows for sure? But their line was that they will have upwards of 10 copies of this product that they can order to sell to their players. However, to be fair, it seems like the allocation for this product fell short of that mark. Most stores were getting maybe 3 to 5 copies of it. So a store our size, we were Advanced Plus, I think, based on Wizards metrics, even though they don't use that anymore. It's more number of unique players per event, I think, something like that during a cycle. Whatever it is. I mean, we're not a large vendor, but we're not the smallest vendor out there either. We're middle of the road. So yeah, I would expect maybe our store would get 5 copies of this max. Also, I guess it's important to know that in that original announcement, Blake from Wizards of the Coast did explicitly say that this is not the product this year alone, so 2020, that will see fetches in it. There will be an upcoming non-standard booster product. So not sealed boxes like a commander pack or dual decks or anything like that, but this would be a non-standard booster product containing fetches at a more reasonable reprint. No other details have been given at this time. That's just something that came out in the original announcement. It's also important to know that the product, so the cards themselves, there's 5 cards in it, 1 of each of the original fetch lands. They're not foiled. They feature alternate artwork from some of the recent planes we've been to. I think Misty Rainforest is Ixalan, for example. Arid Mesa, I think, is Amonkhet, things like that. And then it has this giant box for displaying 5 cards. I don't know why you would do that, yeah.
Neither does the professor. He hates the box.
but somebody would do that, I guess, if they had 5 cards they really want to show off. So I guess it starts getting into the issue around this product. Pricing of this product has obviously been the most contentious issue. And yeah, we're definitely going to expand on that a bit more, because I guess it was SCG that fired the first shot here, the shot that was heard around the world when they listed their product on their store, 10 copies, I guess, or however many they listed. They were sold out by the time I went to check the link to see how many they might have had in stock. But they listed their product for $330
$349.99, and the premium member price was $332.49.
Correct. Yes. And this was their response to the market, I guess. The market had determined this product is worth close to $400, because you could go on eBay and see completed listings for this product retailing for $375, $400. I guess that's US at the times. Yeah. So this was Wizards. Sorry, this wasn't Wizards. This was Star City Games saying, the market has deemed this is what they're worth. So we're gonna, cut everybody a nice deal on this and only charge $330 for it. The issue, part of that, is that in the original announcement for the product, Blake from Wizards of the Coast estimated or had said that their economists had expected this product would retail for about $165 US or similar price to a Commander Anthology.
He said a bit more than Commander Anthology. He never used the word 165, I don't believe.
Yeah.
He said a bit more than Commander Anthology, which on average was around $165 US on release.
Yeah, so since Wizards so that's another thing as well too. So LGSs, we used to have MSRP, so the manufacturer's suggested retail price for these products. So based on an average markup that a store would reasonably apply to these products, gives you an idea of what a lot of places would be charging for. Obviously, a dealer like Amazon that has very little overhead, realistically, it's an online platform a lot of people sell their stuff on, they would be able to maybe charge less for something. Other stores would charge a bit more because they have more overhead. Something like SCG has articles they put out. They have a tournament series that they have to put on, around the country, all that kind of stuff. They have other expenses that they have to pay for that a typical LGS would not pay for.
And
So
that reflects in their average cost.
Yes,
For,
exactly.
for
Now,
singles, for sealed, for basically everything, Star City Games is known as being the most expensive.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
or one
With
of
the
the most.
caveat, though. Well, I mean, yeah, we can get into it with
Mhm.
the prof's updated video recently as well too. The issue was that in the comments, a lot of the Twitter comments and responses, certainly from some of the employees of Wizards or from Star City Games as well too, there was a lot of advocating on behalf of the store, saying that, well, an 80 to 100% margin or markup on these products is common within the industry, which was something you and I take certainly a little bit of issue with. But yes, their rationale for it was that if it was expected to be $165, well, we're going to charge $330 because that's 100%
Yeah,
markup, and that's just typically what we apply onto products like this.
products like
Uh,
this meaning things like From the Vault, Commander, that kind of stuff.
yep,
Big,
I
big,
guess.
big sealed product, effectively.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, I guess before we get too deep in the weeds here, I mean, I guess we could both say our model when we were operating and kind of running the LGS was vastly different than this.
Yes.
Now, in fairness, we didn't have the kind of overhead they did, and we had,
No.
as we said earlier, we had alternate sources of revenue. Magic was not the only thing keeping these businesses afloat. It maybe in a subsequent video we can discuss this. Yes, Magic became a big part of the revenue
Yeah.
sources
Yeah.
for all these businesses and that, but that was not the original intention, that Magic would be the foundation of which all these other businesses relied on. So we did have the ability to sell things a little less than what you would see for some of the larger stores. So again, like we said, face to face being the biggest one operating in our area,
Hmm.
typically would be more expensive. A lot of people would use face to face pricing. The biggest issue though was that we would see a price announced in USD and then converted to Canadian. So the markup of 35%, somewhere around there, just for differences in exchange.
Hmm.
We never operated on that. If you saw a price in US on TCG Player, that's what we charged in Canadian.
For
There's just
singles.
no, yeah, for singles, and oftentimes a lot of the product as well too. We never factored in all of the exchange. Like there would be a part of it, obviously, because distributor costs to acquire these products would be a bit higher because we were Canadian versus a US retailer. But we certainly didn't go to the extreme of charging 80 to 100% markup on this. As I say, like our focus was always, it does us no good to order these products and have them rot on a shelf for 2 years trying to maximize our return. We want to bring this in, we want to find the buyers and get it out immediately, and
Yeah.
then take that money and turn it into something else. So
We want to get the product to the player, is the biggest
exactly,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
And
And this is,
what would you say our average markup was?
oh, I'm trying. I when we were putting the show notes together, I was trying to think about that. I don't have any good examples. I know that so things like dual decks, the challenger decks,
Challenger decks we sold for I think 27.
yeah, from the vaults, Commander anthology products as well too. Again, like we tried to keep it. The other thing as well too, I mean, part of this is that we had a couple other stores in the area that operated on a similar kind of model to us.
Hmm.
That they were smaller, they wanted to just do deals and get sales done and things like that. So we had the benefit of seeing their prices and being able to price our product in that area or in that neighborhood. So no store was necessarily gouging per se because it was fairly well advertised and the players knew what a product was selling for in the area. So we couldn't really hide anything from them. But with that said, our margins were, or our markup on something like this would 60% maybe at the most extreme. At the most extreme. As I say, I don't have any specific examples in front of me, but we did include the exchange as much as possible. And as I say, like you would hear the MSRP for a product back when MSRP used to be announced and existed, and we would try to stay very close to that as much as possible. Um, there was disagreement, obviously, within the business. Felix and I were much more of the perspective of getting the product into the hands of the players. Let's not sit on it and get our money back as quickly as possible. Other people within the structure of the business advocated much more strongly for, why are you giving this stuff away for free? You should be charging more for it, et cetera, et cetera.
There was conflict for sure between us and some
Yeah,
other stores.
yeah,
I'll use a quick example here to draw like a possible comparison. Commander Anthologies was 165 USD. For anyone that knows that conversion, it means it would be, if we're gonna convert it straight, it would be right around 200 to 225 Canadian. And we sold ours for 185 Canadian, which
yes,
is
yeah.
which is
Actually,
about
that's
$20 to $40 cheaper than what you would see if you had a straight conversion. It means it was most likely around a 40% markup on our distributor costs.
yeah, and and with that as well too. I mean, it's good that you bring it up that way because like these products, that was the other issue we were running into as well, is that we were a smaller community. We didn't necessarily have a lot of players. I mean, we were online, but it's not like everybody would be checking our website. I mean,
No,
like
we were
who's
never a
gonna?
go-to for the like
Yeah,
global market.
we were known within our specific community that you had access to buying something online if you wanted to place your order online, come in and pick it up. Um, but even with that said, yeah, it was getting to a point as well that not often, but when a product like that came out and the upfront costs that you were asking people to pay was approaching $200, it's great. Yeah. I mean, if you could make an extra $50, $75 selling the product to someone, that's fine. But we didn't have a community that was uh, wealthy enough, I guess. I don't know. What's the other term for it? Like, it didn't seem fair asking a lot of the players and people that we would have coming into the store to pay some of these prices that you would see online, and that was just a function of the business. Like we had our demographic and we had our customer base, and we appealed to them as much as possible. Like we wanted to make things reasonably affordable as much as we could, and I think we did a good job overall. But yeah, certainly some of these products, like how do you get around it? $200 for a Commander anthology? I mean, that is what it is, and that's going to only be a certain number of people that ever want to pay that. So,
Absolutely.
um, yeah. So I guess from there, with SCG firing the first shot here, uh, we can go into kind of what's been the fallout from this now. SCG certainly got a lot of flack when they first posted this. And more locally and more dear to our hearts, I would say, face to face, was very careful. They were very cautious about how they went about announcing the price for their product as well too. If they were limited to 10 copies of this, um, they wanted to be, I guess, very tactical in how they did it, seeing the kind of the response that players had given SCG for their prices.
Mm-hmm.
So they went out and they were asking people, how should we do this? Should we do everybody put their name in that wants to potentially buy this product, and we can do a random drawing of who gets to buy it and then just do it that way? Or do we mark the product up comparable to what we're seeing in the market and then donate a portion of it? But then that's also kind of scummy because the percentage that, or the portion that you're giving away for charity or whoever, can be a tax write-off.
It also
So
just doesn't make any sense.
it doesn't make any sense. I mean, I am very much, as much as we want to help out the community, and that we never did anything kind of at the behest of the community. If we had a mob of 6 people coming in and saying like, wow, your Tarmogoyfs are $10 more than we've seen everywhere else, it wasn't just like, wow, we should really drop the price on our Tarmogoyfs. It was just kind of like, yeah, you're going to see them a little cheaper somewhere, you're going to see them a little more expensive other places. Like, we have our margin and our markup that we're comfortable selling these things for, that we think is reasonable and not necessarily fair, but reasonable for our business that we're operating. If you think it's a good deal, great. If you don't think it's a good deal, that's fine too. I'm not going to be offended because you didn't buy it. So
No, and I think that pays off in the long run, especially with
yes,
examples like this where the business is so afraid of offending their community, I'll say, of offending the people that might buy this product, that they do some ridiculous gymnastics triple backflip through a flaming hoop to still end up at a terrible decision, to still end
yes,
up at a bad price with bad justifications that still gouges the players that they're trying to give back to. It doesn't make sense to do it this way, and
And
that
what
it's sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say as well too. I mean, like, and it only takes kind of the one time. I mean, draw the line in the sand there, and if you start letting your kind of community, that's one thing you should never do as an LGS owner. Don't let your community run the store.
Mm-hmm.
They can certainly have input and feedback when it comes to scheduling events, running tournaments, all that kind of stuff, how you sell product, sure. But do not let your players or your community dictate what you sell something for, because again, that I think that's that is a misperception within the community that because we are there to serve and help the players as much as possible, that we are beholden to their judgment and their will. Like, what other industry or business could you walk into where a bunch of you complain about the box of like a box of craft dinner or something like that being too expensive, and the grocery store says, wow, 6 people have said that these boxes of craft dinner are too expensive. We're definitely going to drop our price here now. No, the business operates at a price, and it's up to you to go to various places and do your research and compare and contrast, and then make your decision. It's ultimately on you as the purchaser of these things
You
to
have to
determine
find
whether it's worth it.
you have to find the best deal for yourself.
Correct.
Unless the store you go to has like a price match or some kind of, innate mechanic within their own store that allows you to do something like this, you have to put in a little bit of work and find a price that you're happy with.
Yes.
It's not on the store owner because you don't like that they're charging $5 for their booster pack. It's not on the store owner to reduce their cost to $4 because you're unhappy. It's on you to go and find a store that you're happy with. And obviously this is, I'll say it's coming from a place of a little bit of privilege in that I've had a local game store close enough to me to either walk or bike to for a long time. I now have one close enough to me to drive to. Like, I'm in a place that I can sort of pick a store that works for me. If you only have one store that's close by, maybe you don't even have a store close by, and they're trying to gouge you, then sure. Speak your mind, try and get something changed. But you should never expect a store that is facing competition to reduce their costs because you're upset with it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a place that has stores with competition, speak with your wallet. Don't say, oh, you should reduce the cost. Go to the other store. Buy from somewhere else. Support a different business if you're unhappy with another one that's near you.
Yeah, and the other part of that as well. We were very explicit and vocal with our community that when we were selling a lot of this stuff, certainly with our singles and things, because we didn't deal with a lot of exchange. We didn't do, the conversion from US to Canadian prices on a lot of this stuff. And we would say to the players very directly that our prices are intending to be in line with what would be a TCG market, a TCG mid price. So they would have access. I mean, everybody has access to the internet, maybe more or less at this point. So they could, in real time, look up the price on some of these things. If our prices started to drift away from some of these, they hadn't been updated recently, we kind of lost the mark on something spiked, something fell out of favor, whatever it is. There were, no shortage of instances where somebody would come in and say, hey, you have something in the case listed there for $13, but TCG player has it listed as a median price of like $11.50. Would you be willing to sell it for that? Sure, that's fine. That's not them dictating a price to me that something is worth. It's them reminding me that I've already made the claim that we try to be in line with a pricing system. We try to standardize it and keep it, level set as much as possible. And if things drift a little too high in some instances, and we want to get rid of that card and make the sale, then by all means we'll do it. And
that's a really good example of something that I mentioned, that if the store has a mechanic or something that they've sort of said that they're going to stand by. In this case, we say TCG mid. Some people will say, whatever, TCG mid plus conversion. Those are all things that store has already said, these are our prices. This is what we're going to stick to. And by all means, ask about it. But that's very different than a store, not having anything like that, having their pricing, and you requesting special treatment for it. That's two very different situations.
Yeah, you see it actually a lot more recently. You see a lot of instances in that you don't see many stores anymore putting stickers on their singles to display in the case. A lot of the
Basically, yeah.
time it is you just display the singles in the case and they can either check their phone if you're online and see what your price is, or they can ask you what the price of the card is and you look it up for them.
Mhm.
But it also gives the LGS the flexibility to remove that part of the process and not have to be so aware of that. I mean, when you're managing, we didn't have necessarily the biggest collection in the world, but we had enough cards and things to worry about for the number of people that were working there that constantly staying on top of the price of every single thing um, would be cumbersome and a burden at the end of the day. But with that said, as well too, we were very clear about it.
Mhm.
And if we had something listed on our website that was an old price, and somebody came in to buy it because it spiked and we might have missed it for whatever reason, it started getting played in a pet deck or it started to get some traction, whatever it was, we're selling it for $4. Oh, but the market price online is 8, and they come in and they buy it for 4 and everybody says they got a good deal. That's fine. We didn't at the end of the day be like, wow, we lost $4, we really should have marked our price up there.
Mhm.
No, it was, okay, we missed the mark on this one, but ultimately we sold the card for what we had listed at originally, even including the old markup that we would apply to this stuff. So we ultimately won on this. We didn't get the most we could have got for it, but we still got a reasonable return on these things.
Mhm.
And again, I'm glad to get rid of that card. If it was rotting in the case for 8 months and it spiked because of inclusion in some deck or something, and everybody came in and bought the 12 copies we have on hand at the old price,
Yeah.
great. I got rid of those cards and I never have to worry about the spike price again.
Lots of people bought what card was it? Kelp Wall of Kelp.
Yes.
That shit. That card
Wall of
spiked at
Kelp,
one point.
Nar.
We had,
Yeah.
a couple dozen copies listed at 8 cents or whatever that card was worth. Tons of people bought that card at 8 cents, even though it was $17 for God knows what reason.
Yes. Yeah.
Sure, that's 8 more cents than we would have made off that card ever. You
Yeah.
know?
And the other recent example like comes in waves was Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah.
We would always get Stoneforge Mystics in during the off season, and you'd buy them for whatever they're at, and you'd give your percentage of whatever you think they're worth, and you would acquire them. And then, sure enough, every banned and restricted announcement would come around before it got unbanned, and it would jump up in price 50%. And then everybody would come in and be like, "Oh man, like I'm gonna get my Stoneforge Mystics. It says online they're worth $30, but you've got them listed for 22, so I'm gonna buy them. I'm gonna buy them all." It's just like, great, buy them all, like whether it gets unbanned or not, I don't care. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just we bought them at our percentage, we have our markup included in that, and I just want them gone at this point. So it's kind of the way it is.
It's
So
just
it's
how
it's
it
it's,
works.
it's just the way it works. So
At the very beginning of this, we touched on, or at some point in the middle of this discussion, we touched on WotC had an MSRP. They no
correct.
longer have an MSRP. This doesn't mean that the cost of their products has necessarily changed. MSRP is a suggested price for the retailer to sell their product at after they've bought from their distributor. Just because there's no longer an MSRP does not mean that a product is significantly more expensive to purchase from your distributor. So we see these discussions online all the time, and lots of people on Twitter, on Reddit, on the big sort of discussion boards around the Secret Lair product, we see a lot of people saying this never would have happened if there was an MSRP. And that's simply not true.
These people never bought it from the vault from an LGS
Never.
back
At
in the
no
day.
point. At no
Like,
point have these people, remembered that MSRP for From the Vault was $19.99, I think almost always. That product is more than likely $40 to $60 when you buy it from a store. And we've
I
never had this
remember
kind of backlash.
I remember From the Vault Realms, I think was the specific one that it was the MSRP on it, I think was $29.99 or
Mm-hmm.
$35.99. And we didn't, I will say this again, we didn't do this, but you would very regularly see online people asking $70 for it, $100
Mm-hmm.
for it, and it would sell.
We
But
gave one away at
again,
a pre-release.
we gave one away at a pre-release, yeah. But like you say, these are always like, maybe you can highlight this example or illustrate this example with the difference between an MSRP and an MAP. Is it MAPP?
Yep, and I can actually give a really good example
Yeah.
of a business that functions in the second way. Yeah.
Yep.
So MSRP is a suggested retail price, and then MAPP is a minimum advertised minimum advertised asking price, something like that.
Yeah, I
It's
think
it's
it's
it's effectively a number. It's a guideline that the company gives you that says you cannot advertise this product for less than this price.
yes.
So it
If
is
you were
it
going
is
to,
a
yeah,
baseline cost that you can expect to buy a product for, and you know that if it's above that, then it's the store putting a price above that.
correct.
And it's similar to MSRP in that the consumer can have a better idea of what a thing should cost based on the recommendation of the company. Um, Minimum advertised price is something that Games Workshop does. Games Workshop is the company behind Warhammer 40K, Warhammer Fantasy, probably the biggest miniature game on the planet, and they have a minimum advertised price that you can't go over. They also have an MSRP, and they have 1,000 other things that make it really hard to work with. But they're a good example of a company that has very strict guidelines on pricing, and that's why you see basically any store that sells Games Workshop product, they're right around the same. No matter where it is, no matter what the product is, they're very, very similar in cost because the consumer knows exactly what they should expect the price to be, and they're very conscious that if it's way more expensive than you'd expect, you can just buy it online or you can buy it from another store that sells the product.
Yep.
You can almost always find that product for right around that number.
We started to dabble in Warhammer, so those are the miniatures I was specifically for Warhammer. And I had never dealt with Games Workshop before. I had heard the company was kind of a nightmare to deal with in the
Mm-hmm.
past, maybe not so bad recently. But I very explicitly remember getting a slap on the wrist from Games Workshop because we were using Crystal Commerce again as our vending platform online, kind of advertising, not the explicit way to do it, but
Mm-hmm.
we were advertising prices on these products that were less. The thing that we had for Games Workshop, which I guess is common within the retail space if anybody's selling these minis, is that you advertise obviously at that minimum price that Games Workshop dictates that you are allowed to advertise. However, if you come into the store, it's kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like, oh, it says it's $100 online, but we sell all of our miniatures in store for 10% off. We just have to advertise it at that price. But if you come to us, we'll always discount it in store. We just can't, tell you that through the regular stream. So I got a slap on the wrist because I was listing product. You can list it as the MSRP, and then you can also put it as like the sale price. So the MSRP price or the MAP price online was struck out, and then there was our price underneath, which was the MAPP minus 10%. And then Games Workshop contacted me and said, nope, you're advertising this price for 10% less than what we told you can sell it for. So we had to go back and change that.
At the beginning of this, I forgot to mention the MAP that they give is a significant markup.
Yes.
It was higher than what we would have marked the product up for if
Correct.
we followed our regular guidelines on board games. We carried Reaper miniatures, they're like little D&D minis, and we would have followed the same markup on those. The required markup through the company was higher than what our number actually would have been.
Again, because this is Games Workshop and their economists or whomever saying that across the industry as a whole and on average, this is what typically people would mark up the product for to sell. You don't necessarily have to, but we've already done the work of including that into the price and telling you can't sell for less than that because it should cover a reasonable store's overhead and margins and things like that. So,
and that's typically what MSRP is as well. It's the expected cost of a product that the company thinks this is what it'll sell for. With that said, MSRP does not necessarily mean cheap. It does not mean inexpensive. It doesn't mean low markup. Just because a product has an MSRP, that doesn't mean it's less than what the store would sell it for. That doesn't mean it's, the lowest cost that you'll find it, and it definitely doesn't mean it's the greatest cost that you'll find it. MSRP was a guideline of expected value from the company. We strayed from MSRP constantly. Lots of stores stray from MSRP constantly. And the fact that MSRP is gone wouldn't or did not change the pricing structure that we carried.
Correct.
We didn't try to pull the wool over a customer's eyes because they could no longer look at the MSRP for a product. We were very honest about our markup. It was consistent, and from that, people would know what we paid a distributor to get our product. So when I see all of these things on Twitter where people are saying MSRP was the savior, they removed MSRP and now it's the apocalypse, like that's simply not the case. If a product is more expensive than you expect it to be and is more expensive markup wise than what they're getting from their distributor, or maybe it's consistent. You know, SCG, maybe they put a 100% markup on all of their sealed product. MSRP certainly doesn't change that. MSRP is going to be lower than what Star City Games charges. Everyone knows that it's going to be lower than what Star City Games charges, yet people still buy from Star City Games. So the misinformation that gets spread around is that this is a direct cause of WotC no longer having a stated expected cost. But what you can actually take away from it is that bad actors in the community or stores that want to charge more than what they should be, that want to mark something up higher than what it is worth, are abusing the fact that MSRP is gone, or are using that fact to take advantage of their consumer. And that's not at fault of WotC. That's at fault of the store. If you have a store that's gouging you for the price of a product, and you have a store that's marking something up significantly higher than what it should be, that is on the store. You should voice your concerns to your local game store. You should voice your concerns to the online platform. You should voice your concerns to a store that is gouging you for a cost, and not to Wizards because MSRP is gone.
Yeah, so to bring it back to the specific issue of Secret Lair Ultimate, a lot of people have been pegging, so going back to the SCG announcement of $330, even if you were to assume, say, across the market, $350 on average for this product. Wizards told you in the original announcement very clearly, very explicitly to everyone what they would expect the product to sell for, with the caveat that there's nothing preventing you from doing the research yourself and see. This is 5 cards. These are 5 very specific cards. You can look at similar cards on the market. They're not the exact same. They're not the same artwork. They didn't come the same way, new border, all that kind of stuff, whatever it is. But there are analogs within the greater marketplace that you can use to inform your opinion on whether a product is worth that value or not. If Wizards of the Coast, a representative from it, goes on, and again, Wizards of the Coast cannot acknowledge the secondary market. No matter how many times people say in videos, Wizards obviously knows about the secondary market. Yes, they know the secondary market exists. Yes, they know that people will often buy their product for less than what they sell it to a distributor for, or what they suggest a retailer should sell it for, to in turn take that product and sell it to other players for more. But that's outside of Wizards' hands. They can't control that. But they know it exists. They just can't explicitly acknowledge it.
Yeah.
So how many times we have seen in the community with this product specifically of this markup, and somehow that it is Wizards' fault. I understand that the product is constrained in the sense that there's a limited supply. There's only so many copies of this going to be sent to your LGSs. However, in the original announcement video and the subsequent Tolarian Community College with Blake again, trying to break it down for the prof. Say what you will about the message or the messenger, whatever it is. They tried to be very, very explicit that this product is a very specific product. It is targeting a very specific demographic. And for the people that do want fetch lands for play at a more reasonable price, a subsequent reprint is coming in a different product. This was not the last time these cards were going to be printed in 2020. So anyone running around saying that this is the new price of fetch lands for 2020 going forward is incorrect. It's absolutely incorrect. Just go back to when Modern Masters 3 came out and they originally reprinted the fetch lands. It was a premium product per se. The price of the packs were whatever they were supposed to be. Obviously, some stores sold it for more. Other stores were just like, we want to get rid of this at the $7 or whatever that Wizards thinks that the pack is worth.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is. Look at the price of the cards then. Fetches had never been cheaper with that reprint, and I have no doubt we're going to see that again. But to turn around and say that a product that they suspected or suggested or whoever or whatever, sorry, would be worth $165, and then you have major retail outlets saying, no, we're going to sell it for $350 because that's what the market has determined the price is worth, and you still end up buying it, that's on you.
Yeah.
I mean, that is on you. It's not Wizards' fault.
You're smart people. You play a very challenging children's card game. Yes. I play it too. You are intelligent, critical thinking gamers, right? You play a challenging game that requires a lot of decisions. You can use that brain of yours to see that this is not right on the part of the stores.
Correct.
I have complete faith that everyone that watches this video is a smart person and that they can determine for themselves what is and isn't good value.
For all the people out there that want to purchase this product at the original stated estimated price of $165, mm-hmm. whatever that breaks it down to into individual singles prices, this would have been the perfect opportunity for you to vote with your wallets and not buy this product. Then all the speculators that bought it at these inflated prices that can't move the singles would have had to drop their prices eventually. Mm-hmm. But it was much easier to hand wave the issue away here and say, Wizards did this. Wizards did this to us with no responsibility or accountability on the part of the customers or the people that were buying this product at the obviously overstated and inflated price.
The explicitly overstated and inflated price.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that, I guess, this leads directly into, like we said, this is April 18th. And this is, I guess, the day after Tolarian Community College had released their video about this product, whether it was worth it to buy at the price. Obviously, if you haven't seen the video, it's not hard to find. It's probably making the rounds. It's obviously a big talking point right now. Mm-hmm. But the product got to fail. But the product got to fail because of perceived missteps and the fault of Wizards of the Coast without any kind of implicit or explicit no, he kind of let the stores get away with it, and I don't like that. I don't like that.
Well, that's something that's happening a lot is that I've also as much as I say I've seen threads talking about how this is all how this is all WotC's fault. There are also threads talking about how local game stores are charging too much, how local game stores are taking advantage of players, and all of that's very true. But in those same threads, I see people defending the local game stores and saying this is the big bad WotC's fault. Big bad WotC. They don't like the players, they hate the local game stores, and this is all on them. Yes, and that's kind of what this video is.
Yeah, this goes back to all those arguments of the cardboard doesn't cost anything. Wizards can print these into the dirt, and we could all have $5 fetch land, blah, blah. With no, again, it's just there's no accountability on any of the people buying these at the inflated price, and nobody willing to admit to themselves. It's a way to excuse yourself from the kind of buyer's remorse that you have. It's like, wow, I really wanted these, and if they're only available at $350, I guess now's my time to buy it. Oh shit, I just paid $350 for 5 fetch lands. And they're not worth that at all. I could have saved $100 just buying them off the secondary market.
It's a way to excuse yourself from thinking critically about the product.
Correct. Yeah.
In the video he uses, or in both of these videos, I have on screen, is it worth it? And then the original, or the second discussion that the prof has with Blake, talking about, why does it cost so much? What are all of these things? And he uses some, pretty specific examples. He talks about how this is not a meaningful reprint. He talks about how these cards are required to play the game of Magic. He talks about how the box is too big, like a lot.
and how if
like a lot, he
that
talks
was
about how the box is too
that was
big.
explicitly addressed, that if we only made the box smaller, somehow it would be cheaper for Wizards of the Coast to send small quantities of this product to every LGS in the world rather than keep it at whatever size box they were going to use and sell more product to very specific distributors who then sell it to the stores.
And Blake was actually spot on about this in his response to that video. He said that a lot of Magic product is shipped in bulk, that things are not individually packaged, stored, and then shipped. And that's true. We would constantly get shipments that have, a bunch of Dragon Shield sleeves, and then dice, and then playmats, and then boxes all together. The box being small doesn't make it significantly cheaper. It'll be bundled in when they buy their Dragon Shields. It'll be bundled in when they buy a playmat. It'll be bundled into the same box that gets sent when they buy the other product that they buy every single week.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so the other, I mean, we don't, I don't want to go too deep into this necessarily, but I think the other issue that's kind of at play here as well about this is, God, I think I just lost my train of thought. I was trying to find it on the show notes here. I might have to come back to it if we find it when we get to it eventually. Shit. Yeah. Okay. I just lost it.
What were you trying to say?
I don't know. We'll keep plowing through here on the.
Okay.
Maybe it'll rejog memory, but I did have something I was going to say. Something about the shipping. I can't remember. I don't know. I'll come back to it.
Sure. One of the prof's other, sort of significant stances is that this is not a meaningful reprint. This is not significant. And because this is not a meaningful reprint and this is not significant, that's why it's so expensive. That's why places are charging so much, because it's not a significant reprint. And he cites, Sol Ring as an analogy, in that Sol Ring isn't needed by many formats. It's needed by Commander players to play the game, and they print it all the time, which is why it's so cheap. And that's great, and they should just do the same thing with fetch lands.
And sorry, we're throughout this entire video that we're doing here, we're going to take umbrage with the stance that any of these cards are needed, quote unquote.
I don't believe that any of the cards are needed.
Yeah.
I have never I've
it?
never owned a Marsh Flats, and I have never owned a Verdant Catacombs, and I've played at virtually every level of Magic you can imagine.
Yeah, exactly. Like you take 100 random Magic players, like it's the same thing with trying to determine what is the value of a product. We all value things differently. We all value our time differently. We all value our, whatever it is. There's never going to be one size fits all to a lot of this stuff. So it always just kind of comes back to you being a reasonable functioning member of society, making decisions for yourself that are either in your best or worst interest. So
think critically about the cards that you need to play the game successfully. There's a whole other video in and of itself. Again, there are a lot of branches from this discussion that we can dive deeper into that we aren't in this video. But I've played in every format, and I've never owned certain fetch lands. I have, throughout the course of my Magic career, I've built 100+ Commander decks, and I've never felt like missing Marsh Flats prevented me from building those. I built Commander decks at every price point, and I've never felt that not owning a Marsh Flats prevents me from doing so. I've never even really felt that not owning a fetch land or two prevents me from building optimized deck lists. That's not a feeling that I have either. There's a very, there's a misconstrued point in that these things are ever required to play the game, and especially required to play the game in the format that a collector's item such as this is printed for. That format being Commander, a singleton format that has a lot of collectors who play the game and is, according to WotC, the largest community in Magic right now. None of those people are required to have these cards to play. Many of them don't have them already and still play Commander. Many of them will play 5-color decks and not have these fetches, and they'll be happy. And they'll play, and they'll win, or they'll lose. But the notion of them being required to even set foot into the door of casual or competitive Magic is beyond me.
Yeah. So you were referring to specific Soul Ring, which was an example that Prof gave in his video of a card that needs to be reprinted. Therefore, Wizards of the Coast is more meaningful and thoughtful in their reprints of this card by including it in every Commander product, because every player that plays Community, I guess, is shackled by whether they have access to Soul Ring or deck. And how many times had we heard, even in our community? Again, it's all anecdotal evidence, but how many times had we heard it in our community, specifically, or players within their own play group saying, you know what, some people have access to Soul Ring, other people just don't find it fun to play the format with this card, so we're just going to like have a handshake agreement that nobody will include Soul Ring in their deck.
People, yeah, I think the term for Commander is Rule Zero, in that if your play group decides on something, that's now the rule for your play group, right? And we've had all kinds of stuff. We've had people that don't play with Soul Ring. We've had people that play with their own ban list. We've had people play Urza, the Planeswalker, as their 5-color Super Friends commander. We've had people who played who was the judge from that PPTQ? I'm forgetting his name, but he played like a
super nice dude. Yeah,
he's great.
What was his name?
He played like a gnome commander deck with a ton of uncards. He played contraptions in his deck and all this like crazy shit. It was super cool.
He did a gnome tribal deck, and a lot of the gnomes were only printed in unproducts. So before he sat down to play with everyone, he said, I understand it. My deck includes a lot of these uncards that aren't typically included in Commander. The deck was not optimized or busted in any way, but it was the only way for him to meaningfully play a gnomes tribal deck in the format that he wanted to. So we got verbal acknowledgement from everyone before they started playing. I mean, things like that are just not uncommon.
And in his gnome tribal deck, the thing that's not legal in the format, that's completely casual, that's like kind of fun. He also just played random lands that were really good. He had like a beta Tundra that he put in his deck. He had a beta Underground Sea that he put in his deck. Those cards are by no means required to play his Gnome Tribal Uncommander deck. In the same way that Misty Rainforest is not required to play your Reese the Redeemed Elf Ball deck.
Yeah. Not to poo-poo the notion of it, but it is kind of that very superficial kind of first level thinking that you conflate the price of something to the power of something. So because these cards are expensive, they are inherently powerful. Certainly that can be the rule in a lot of cases. That's not always the case. There's lots of exceptions for that. And that could be a supply constraint. That could be just the desirability of the card because collectors like collecting it, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But there is a lot of misperception within the community that because these are expensive, we need them because they are powerful, and we can only win if we have them.
Yeah, another anecdote for this from my point of view. I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I played a Riku clone deck. Every creature was a clone. Every spell forked a spell. That was the whole deck. That was the point. I just wanted to copy stuff and play with everyone else's cards. I think on turn 1 I led with a volcanic island, and on turn 2 I played a tropical island. I was promptly targeted and killed out of that game because my dual lands were expensive, therefore my deck was too powerful. So the notion that Tyson brings up that cost equals power, especially in a format like Commander, is true for some cards. Like Demonic Tutor is a very powerful card, but it's also untrue for others in that you can. I mean, my Riku clone deck would probably be just as good, and I would win just as few games with it if I didn't play Tropical Island or Volcanic Island. I also, could take out Scalding Tarn and Misty Rainforest, and the deck would not change that much.
Correct.
It would still be a for fun, casual Commander deck. I could play nothing but basic lands, and it would be fine.
This is getting into the point. This is getting into that area now. We've touched on as well too. Yeah, I guess in previous episodes of the cast of. It's about, I guess, kind of optimizing at that point. And what is an extra 1% out of your deck, like squeezing that last little bit of efficiency out of your deck worth? There's a very real price to that. And I agree that if you want to optimize everything and have the best version of everything, whether it's for playability or collectability, the best quote unquote version of something usually comes with a higher price tag. But it is by no mean required to, like you say, get to sit down at the table and play that version of whatever it is with your friends or with whomever. It yeah, it's just the next level. If you want to have the best version of something, there's a very real cost with that.
Yeah.
And the best is obviously subjective. It is different for everyone. So
Yeah, but for specifically the format that this seems targeted to, I think the point is quite potent in that Commander is a type of format that holds, every level of competitive nature. You have the like super super casual have 100 random cards and a legendary creature they like, and then you also have the highly 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 competitive, super tuned, very optimized CEDH group. And they're playing the same format, but they play in completely different ways, and they require completely different tools to play their decks. So, a product like this that has 5 fetch lands in it, one of each, they fit right into your commander decks. This is a product for the, middle end to high end of that community. This is a product that people, might want to pick up if they're trying to optimize a deck. If they're trying to move from being medium to competitive. Or it's something that, the competitive guys like because those people enjoy pimping out their decks. They like having the coolest looking card. They like having their favorite art, their favorite version. And those are the people that would want a product like this. And those are also people, that typically will spend up for a more premium product.
that's a very important point, which is something we haven't touched on yet, is that a lot of people within the community, I think, are making a very bad take that Wizards gave LGSs access to selling Secret Lair Ultimate as a way to help them out. Certainly, with everything that's going on in the world right now, that this was supposed to be the product with the intention of helping stores out and survive everything that's going on if they're particularly struggling.
This was the COVID-19 bailout product.
Correct. This product was announced well before that, and certainly was in development well before that. I'm sure when they all sat down and they workshopped the idea of first 20 Secret Lair products we're going to put together. Well, look, Theros is coming out. We're going to have more gods. So we're going to make a gods one. People like cats, so we made a cat one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, if people are really outraged at us for cutting out LGSs from this entire thing, why don't we give them the one that would be the most desirable by players and include them in on that? And thinking that way, if you're going to have a markup of 40% on something, I'd rather make 40% on $100 than 40% on $20 if I'm a store. So why would they give a store access to a product like Goblin's Secret Lair when you could give them the fetch land ones? Again, you say what you will about the allocation of the product or the supply of it, whether it's too little, too much, whether you believe the line that every store having access to, say, upwards of 10 copies of this would be more copies of any other Secret Lair that's sold in the world up to this point. Whatever it is, the point is that if they were going to give one to a store, of course they would give them this one. It's the most desirable, and it's probably the one that's easiest to sell. But it was by no means ever intended to be the one that, with everything else going on in the world right now, would be the ones the stores should take, jack up the price on, and then be able to pay their rent for next month. It wasn't going to be that. And consequently, with that as well, too, because there were so few copies that each store got, I certainly take a specific issue with the stores like SCG and Face-to-Face that say, because the market has determined the product is worth $400, we're going to list ours for $350 as a favor to everyone because we're so altruistic and benevolent. We're just big fans of yours in that way. That I don't know. I don't know. This whole product is just baffling.
The idea that this product is somehow, the saving grace of an LGS also just doesn't make sense when you look at the cost of a product for an LGS.
And it's
We can
also
be-
such a
Sorry, we
Yeah.
can be like very. This is like super basic though, right? To make money off of this product. Let's say I want to make I want to make my regular markup, and that's 60%, right? So I buy my product for $100 and I sell it for $160. I could have had a very similar amount of money if I just didn't buy the product.
Correct. You could take that money, invest it into any other product that the store sells.
Or just pay my rent with it.
or just pay your rent with
If
it.
my if
Whatever
my
it
if
is,
my
it's your
goal
money.
is to simply like if my goal is to simply pay the bare minimum so that my store stays open, luxury products are not something you need to buy
Yeah.
from the perspective of the store. They
And that is,
are a
yeah,
luxury.
that is an issue as well too. I take with this entire thing is kind of the hand waving of it all on the part of Star City Games and kind of face to face as well too. They say that they are, they're constrained by what the market has determined the price of this product is. But if they got 10 copies of this product, they are a store that's big enough and able to operate even in times like this, with all the other stores closed down because a lot of them would be in-store sales, for example. They have a very robust and expansive online platform where they can sell product and you never have to step foot in their doors.
Mm-hmm.
So to have this product come around in such a limited supply, jack up the price like they did for it, and just say, well, it's part of our our regular markup that we do on things, without acknowledging the fact that the portion of sales or the portion of their revenue that this product makes, relative to what else they've sold this month or what they will sell in the, and use that as kind of the basis of where the price came from, and to kind of, as I say, like to just say that the market determined this for, versus another store that can't be open right now, can't be selling things to their player directly. I don't personally take fault with a smaller store taking this product if they only got 3 copies of it, and yes, times being what they are right now, struggling to continue operating, whatever it is, if they up the price on this higher than they normally would, to give themselves a little bit of a cushion, like this is their one opportunity to make some money on a product, that's fine. But for the stores like SCG and Face to Face to do that and just say, well, that's normally how we operate, and they've been operating all along, I that's what I have an issue with as well too.
Yeah. There's sorry, one final thing on the pricing here. Uh let's say we're a smaller store, we don't have an online presence, and we get allotted 6 of these. The markup here has to, be low enough that someone is going to still buy the product, but be high enough to warrant, buying a luxury item like this for the
and
store.
and driving away that portion of the community who can't afford it now.
Yeah, absolutely. But
Yeah.
in a time like this, I people are saying that this was supposed to be the saving grace for an LGS in COVID. My perspective on it is that there the reason that this item is so expensive for a lot of stores is specifically because of that justification. They're using this situation as an excuse to make a 100% markup on a product and charge the customer more. A store could very easily buy this product for their whatever the cost. I'm going to use $100 as the example again. Sell it for $160. They're A, more likely to sell to their regular consumer because it's cheaper. B, they still make a significant portion of their money as profit. And C, they're still in the good books of their community, and those people will continue to buy from them in a hard time like this. If you're a smaller store and you buy your product and you sell it for $400, a lot of people aren't working. They're not very likely to buy the product from you, and they're not very likely to support you after you do this with your product. But you're using this situation as an excuse to charge more for the product under the guise of this will support us more and you're just helping us more and we really need your help right now.
I specifically also take issue with SCG setting their prices based on what they have seen in the secondary market, that they are letting speculators and predatory behavior
Mm-hmm.
within the marketplace dictate what they set their price at, because they have seen online speculators and people saying that this product is worth $400 and I'm going to sell it on eBay for $400, and oh look, it's sold for $400 on eBay, therefore that's what this product is worth. They have never done that with anything else, any other product. in this most recent video by Tolarian Community College, they bring up the instance of Commander Anthology, and he makes the argument that Commander Anthology, when it came out, was 165, 175, $200, whatever it was,
Mm-hmm.
and contained almost $450 in value. $450 in value. Now, ignoring the fact that Commander Anthology is a product that contains, 300 cards in it versus Secret Lair Ultimate, which has 5, um, I never once saw SCG listing that, oh wow, we bought these from our distributor, and the MSRP on Commander Anthology says, it should be about $200. But all these players and the price of the singles said they're worth $450. So we're going to sell our product for $450 because that's what the value is and that's what they're worth. No, let all the other people buy the product and try and resell it at $450 because that's what they think it's worth. Let them get burned on it. But you know what the value of the product is actually worth. Why would you ever let that portion of the marketplace dictate what the price of the product is that you're going to sell it at?
Absolutely.
I don't understand.
Yeah. I think we'll sort of make some closing points and then close out the video. But there's a lot of issues and a lot of, misunderstanding among people about what's going on. And through that misinformation and misunderstanding, stores are taking advantage of their players. But we see among the well-respected, well-known, vocal faces of the community, we see a very different stance on the issue. We see most of them blaming WotC as the company instead of the bad behavior of the stores that was predicted by WotC as the company WotC through Blake and the Tolarian Community College video. This bad behavior was predicted. It was, expected in a lot of ways. But we see people defending bad behavior and blaming WotC because that's what the vocal members of the community are saying to do. It's a dangerous mindset to be in because it allows stores to commit this predatory behavior. It allows stores to overcharge for product because they have the safety net of the community blaming WotC. And they have the safety net of content creators blaming WotC. So they can get away with whatever they want to get away with. They can get away with whatever bad behavior they want to commit on whatever product they want to commit it on. And that's a dangerous, slope to go down for Magic as a whole. If we start accepting prices like this from the stores as, just the way things have to be because WotC is the big bad, then we're going to allow them to keep taking advantage of us as the players. And I'd like to see the player base as a whole get a little bit more educated on how this process works from the perspective of an LGS, and I hope this video has, helped you in somewhat understand how overhead cost and distribution and the little things within the scope of a store, how that impacts price, and how things right now are so wildly different from what they should be, and how that's not the fault of WotC, but the fault of bad behavior among the stores. But with that, Tyson, do you have any final words?
No, as I say, like we touched on a lot of this stuff. A lot of the time within the community, the rallying cry seems to be vote with your wallet.
Mm-hmm.
And this would have been the perfect example of a product to do that. I understand people would like to own this product, but that does not excuse you paying for it, supporting that kind of bad behavior that we've acknowledged, and then kind of walking it back and saying, well, this is Wizards' fault. It doesn't serve you any better, and it doesn't serve the community any better to always use Wizards of the Coast as your scapegoat. You had as much information. The information is out there, and it's up to you to educate yourself and be reasonable about a lot of these things. When we were covering this just over the course of the video, I mean, we touched on a bunch of different things that could be their own video. At the end of the day, and in this entire process, say that the one thing that could have been done differently is Wizards just print more, or whatever it is, to just always reduce the argument down to, well, Wizards could have done X or shouldn't have done Y, is too reductive, and and it, as much as it is to kind of complain about these things, be the complainers about the complaining, it does become very tiresome. And the amount of time that I've spent involved in this community, I am just always so surprised how we have not, as a whole, learned anything at this point. That the game has been around for more than 25 years. The model of distribution and things like that, yeah, there's been kind of changes to some of these products. Like some of these products never existed back in the day, or they were never distributed in the way that they are today. But the model itself exists unchanged largely. And to still be kind of surprised by a lot of these things that happen and then pigeonhole Wizards of the Coast as the reason for those things happening again, even though you would hope or expect people to know better. I think it's just very disingenuous, and it never adds anything more to the conversation to just say, Wizards again, they did this to us. I think people really need to, I agree. Like I would like to see a community much more educated on a lot of this stuff, and just be more accountable as well too. We hold Wizards of the Coast's very high standard of being accountable to us, the players, and yet we constantly kind of fall for everything that happens that isn't their direct fault. And I don't. It's exhausting almost. I mean, I'm not going to certainly leave Magic anytime soon, but it does become exhausting to just see kind of the same arguments and talking points circulate over and over again, no matter what product is being sold or tournament is being run or whatever it is. It's at the end of the day, it always comes down to this one single issue. And yeah, it's just I don't know. I don't know. Is it worth it to cover this stuff more in the future? Maybe not. I think we'd be remiss not to talk about this stuff, but I don't know. I feel like we're yelling into the void at this point, maybe. I don't know.
Hopefully one person who listened to this is, learned something valuable and taken something away and, changes for the better. But I hope you enjoyed, and check out the podcast every Sunday around 8 p.m. Eastern, Twitch TV/Team Shower Felix.
Yeah, we promise we won't.
SHOWERFELIX. Check us out there.
Yeah, we promise we won't chastise you nearly as much if you come over to Twitch and the stream.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't clap back nearly as much. So,
but thank you for listening, and hope you have a good day. Stay safe.